The dropship's hatch opened with a hiss, exhaling cold, sterilized air into the bright expanse of Landing Sector 7. Cadet Maya Reyes squinted against the twin suns of Virex Station, their pale light diffused through the high titanium dome that covered the Academy's upper levels. It had taken her 5 jump ships, 2 resupply orbits, and a week of quarantine just to reach this place. The most elite military academy in the galaxy. And now that she was here, the weight of every eye in the docking bay seemed to converge on her. She was the only human. Cadets of every known race clustered in organized formation. Tall, angular figures in blue exo-armors, translucent beings floating in fluid suits, insectoid creatures with 6-eyed visors, and species Maya couldn't name, let alone categorize. Some whispered in alien dialects, others stared openly. No one approached her. She was clad in Earthlander Navy fatigues, her insignia still fresh, her boots unstained. To them, she was a novelty at best, an outsider, a species barely above pets and planetary guards. A sharp voice echoed from a speaker above. Cadet Reyes, proceed to Orientation Hub 14C. Do not delay. Maya straightened and nodded instinctively, though she knew no one could see her. She hoisted her duffel bag higher and walked across the tarmac with steady steps. Her mother had once told her, when you're surrounded by wolves, don't try to bark louder. Just walk like you own the forest. It had gotten her through public school, survival prep, and Space Corps intake. It would get her through this. The orientation hub was a high-ceilinged hall lined with holographic banners displaying each species' military emblem. Maya's eye paused on the rotating glyph for Earth, an olive branch intersecting a stylized planetary ring. Her stomach tightened. It looked so fragile next to the war symbols of other empires. The room was packed. Hundreds of cadets stood in small clusters, some laughing, others comparing stats on the wrist damplay modules. She stood alone. A few glanced at her when she entered, but no one moved to make space or offer greetings. She didn't expect any. Humans weren't exactly welcomed here, ever since the Treaty of Lixan had granted Earth observer status in the Galactic Defense Assembly. Most military circles viewed humans as tolerated passengers. Earth's population was small, its colonies young, its technology dated. But Earth had something else. One cadet slot, just one, granted every 4 years to the most qualified applicant. And this cycle, it had been Maya. "Hey, little mudkin, lose your creche keeper?" A tall reptilian male called out with a grin. Maya ignored him and walked toward the admin terminal. Her fingers glided over the smooth interface as she scanned her orders, biometric ID, and placement chart. Assigned quarters, Dome 3B, mess schedule, beta shift, training orientation, Sector 18, the Crucible. Her pulse skipped at the last line. The Crucible, everyone talked about it. A simulation room so advanced it could mimic any battlefield, any terrain, any enemy, in photonic and kinetic realism. Rumors said it could trick even telepathic species into thinking they were dying. It wasn't just for combat training. It was a rite of passage. If a cadet survived their first Crucible run without being tagged, they earned the right to wear the black stripe on their shoulder pad. Only 3% ever did. She made her way to the simulation wing in silence. The corridors pulsed with life, door panels shifting open for alien cadets, service bots gliding through conduits, tactical instructors barking orders. Everyone had a group, a team, a shared language. Maya walked alone. Her duffel over her shoulder, her fingers curled lightly in a fist to suppress the nervous twitch that always came when adrenaline flooded her bloodstream. She arrived at the Crucible's entrance just as a pair of blue-armored cadets emerged, laughing and smacking each other on the back. Their exosuits hissed as the simulated air pressure equalized. One of them, a slender avian with red-plated feathers, noticed her. "That's the human," he whispered to his companion, "the one who passed the entrance logic maze in under 6 minutes. Must been a glitch," the other replied. The doors opened automatically. A digital voice welcomed her in monotone. "Cadet Maya Reyes, DNA signature confirmed. Orientation simulation. Scheduled. Please proceed." She stepped inside. The room was enormous. Dark, circular, with a ceiling lost in shadows and walls made of adaptive alloy. Dozens of instructors stood along a raised platform behind an invisible barrier. The air carried a sharp synthetic scent like burnt ozone and cold plastic. Maya's boots echoed faintly as she crossed the floor toward the center node. A spherical construct descended from the ceiling and scanned her head to toe. Simulation parameters initializing. Terrain randomized. Enemies variable. Duration until elimination or mission completion. Maya exhaled slowly. "Do you understand the rules?" asked a voice from above. Female. Stern. Probably one of the higher-ranking Araxians. Tactical elites of the Academy. "Yes, ma'am," Maya replied, her voice calm. "You may begin." The lights dimmed and the simulation ignited. Mountains rose from the floor like breaking waves. Wind roared to life, carrying the sound of distant engines. A forest materialized to her left, dense and flickering with neon plant life. Ahead, smoke curled above the rooftops of a bombed-out settlement. Drones buzzed in the artificial sky. Her hood came online, displaying movement markers. Dozens of them. Red. Hostile. Encircling her position, she crouched by instinct and scanned the area. No weapons, no allies, no cover that would last more than a few seconds. Her neural implant buzzed softly, syncing her vitals with the simulation's feedback system. Pain would be real, death would feel real, and no one had warned her this would happen on day one. Her lips curved upward slightly. Not fear, something else. Something like opportunity. From the observation deck, instructors monitored her pulse, brain activity, reflex latency. One of them frowned. "She's not going for the supply cache," he muttered. Another zoomed in. "No, she's looking at the environment, calculating." "Instructor," a third said, pointing to the code feed, "she's accessing the environmental control menu." How the hell did she find that sub? The lead instructor leaned forward. "Let's see what the human does next." And Maya Reyes, cadet of Earth, crouched quietly at the heart of the storm, her fingers already navigating the backdoor protocols of the sim. She hadn't come to play by their rules. She had come to win. Maya's footsteps echoed softly through the stone-tiled corridor as she exited the Crucible's chamber. Her heart had calmed, but her thoughts ran fast and sharp. The simulation hadn't finished. The system had suspended it just moments after her unauthorized access. A flashing message, "Activity logged, investigation pending," had replaced the battlefield, and then the world had dissolved around her. Now her mind raced through every possibility. Would she be reprimanded, expelled, promoted? The truth was, she had no idea. The instructors had said nothing as she left. No praise, no warning, not even a glance. The silence was deafening. She walked alone past the rows of dormitory halls, the translucent doors of other cadets hissing open and closed as groups moved between training modules. Her own assignment, room 3B, was tucked into a corner, far from the main passage. When she entered, the lights flickered to life, and the automated voice greeted her like a cheerful ghost. The room was simple but clean. One bunk, a compact desk, a hygiene pod, and a small holoscreen. She dropped her duffel on the bed and sat down, her fingers tapping rhythmically against her leg. Part of her expected a message, an alert, an order to report, but none came. She waited. Hours passed. Night settled over Virex Station like a tinted lens. The stars outside shimmered beyond the dome, casting silver shadows across her floor. She didn't sleep. She couldn't. She reviewed every movement she had made, every keystroke, every improvised trick she had used in the sim. She wasn't even sure if the system crash had been deliberate sabotage or just overwhelmed by her exploit. Either way, someone would have noticed. At 3:17 station time, the alert finally came. Her wristband buzzed. A private message blinked in orange. "New simulation assignment, Crucible, Mapdix level Omega, begins in 6 minutes. Attendance mandatory." She stared at the text. Level Omega? That wasn't in the cadet rotation schedule. That was a command-level scenario reserved for third-year strategic trainees. She was still in her first week. Her breath caught in her throat. This wasn't standard protocol. It was something else. She stood quickly, pulled her jacket on, and stepped back into the corridor. The halls were nearly empty at this hour. A few security drones hummed past her, their sensors blinking. No other cadets moved nearby. The silence only deepened her suspicion. This wasn't a sanctioned test. It felt like a setup. She didn't know who had done it, but she had a few guesses. The simulation wing's entrance stood dimly lit, like a mouth waiting to swallow her. She entered without hesitation. The same sphere dropped from the ceiling and scanned her. This time, it said nothing. It said nothing except to close its eyes. A dull thud, and instantly she knew something was wrong. The sim didn't load a terrain slowly as before. It hit all at once. Urban chaos, collapsing buildings, thick smoke, blaring alarms, and a red-orange sky boiling with fire. Debris rained from above, and her HUD showed enemy indicators surrounding her, 94 units in motion. Heavy infantry, drone swarms, stealth snipers, and air support. The enemy wasn't simulating a skirmish. It was simulating a war. Her breath remained steady, but her mind worked fast. The parameters were overwhelming by design. No weapons appeared in the default spawn zone. No allies, no medkits, no defense towers. This wasn't a challenge. It was a death sentence. Whoever had loaded this scenario wanted her to fail. Not just fail, to be humiliated, perhaps even injured. From a concealed balcony above, 3 cadets watched in silence. They weren't supposed to be there. The entry codes to override the crucible were tightly guarded, but the Xerix twins, Kolar and Vex, had found a workaround last semester. The 3rd cadet, a slim, soft-voiced avian named Troll, had fed them Maya's ID from the Academy's personnel log. "She's moving slower this time," Kolar whispered, his long claws tapping the rail. "She's realizing what we've done," Troll replied with a satisfied trill. "You sure the system won't trace this?" "Already looped," Vex said. "To everyone watching, she loaded this herself." Kolar laughed. "Perfect. Let's see how long Earth's champion lasts." Back in the arena, Maya dove behind a broken wall, her HUD flashing critical proximity alerts. She wasn't armed, but she had her neural access and her instincts. She'd survived far worse than this in survival trials on Mars and training camps across L5. But here, the rules were stacked against her. She peeked out from the rubble and scanned the drone's patrol routes. They moved in looping spirals, lazy and overconfident. That was a mistake. She didn't need weapons to survive, she needed disruption. Opening the simulation's utility console in her mind's interface, she searched for environmental feedback nodes. She wasn't sure if the back door was still open. Maybe the instructors had patched it. But when she pinged the system, the response lagged. Slightly, but enough. It wasn't patched, not yet. Her fingers twitched in the air, unseen by anyone watching, as she began navigating the menu. She couldn't overwrite combat scenarios directly. That would trigger alerts. But she could influence non-critical parameters. She accessed the audio mesh first, isolating ambient noise files, recalibrating the directional sounds across the zone. From the control balcony, Troll leaned forward. "She's not fighting?" "No," Kolar frowned. "She's doing something again. What is she?" The sim zone suddenly shifted. Not visually, but audibly. Deep bass rumbles echoed through the ruined cityscape, strange rhythmic pulses that made no sense at first. But to the drones on patrol, the frequencies matched coded emergency distress calls from an enemy faction. Maya had lifted the alert tones from archived mission data and looped them through the environment. The AI behind the drones hesitated. Then, the first misfire. One drone opened fire on another, mistaking it for an enemy. A second turned toward the chaos. Then a third. Maya crawled deeper into the rubble and watched as the carefully programmed kill squads began tearing into each other in a spiral of algorithmic confusion. She smiled, just slightly. From the balcony, the cadets froze in stunned silence. What is this?" "She didn't even..." Troll stammered. "She's weaponizing the simulation system itself," Vex muttered. "That's not possible, is it?" "It is," Kolar growled, "if you know how to find the override pathways. That's how she crashed the first sim. I thought it was an accident. But this is deliberate." Maya didn't stop. Her fingers danced through the next submenu, activating dormant wind generators in the eastern district of the sim zone. Dust and debris stirred violently. Enemy sniper bots lost line of sight, their targeting systems overwhelmed by particulate interference. A pair of overhead drones collided mid-air, confused by the intervental anomalies. The kill zone was collapsing on itself. She was barely moving. She hadn't thrown a punch or picked up a single weapon, and the timer on her HUD hadn't even reached the second minute. On the instructor deck, alarms triggered. Red lights spun as system admins stormed toward the control panels. One of the Academy's senior officers barked orders in a sharp alien dialect. The Crucible simulation was glitching. Again. Except this time, there was no error. There was only one cadet inside, and the battlefield had declared her the victor. With one final environmental surge, she flooded the simulation's power grid, simulating a magnetic overload. All enemy units shut down simultaneously. Her HUD pinged. Mission complete. 2 minutes. Exactly. The simulation vanished. She stood alone in the hollow chamber, blinking against the sudden light. Her ears rang. Her skin tingled with residual feedback. But she didn't speak. She didn't move until the platform lowered from the ceiling and the voice from before returned. Simulation complete. Performance 100%. Rule violations none. Weapon usage 0. Strategy classification indirect psychological manipulation. Result passed. The door opened. In the corridor outside, silence waited. No officers came, no congratulatory messages, no punishments, nothing. Only the knowledge that someone had tried to break her, and she had turned their trap into a lesson. Maya walked through the corridor with a pace that was neither hurried nor hesitant. Her face held no expression, but her mind burned with motion. The sim had ended. Her HUD had vanished. Her body hummed with the aftermath of sensory immersion, and her skin still prickled from the phantom winds she had summoned to erase her enemies. No one met her in the corridor. No instructors, no curious cadets, not even a drone hovered nearby. It was as if the Academy had momentarily forgotten she existed, and she was fine with that. What disturbed her wasn't the silence, it was the precision. The assignment had been issued without warning, deep into night cycle. The parameters had been outrageously unbalanced. The room had been sealed and quiet when she arrived. And then, after winning, she had been left to walk away without a single debrief or acknowledgement. Someone had pulled strings. Someone high enough to bypass automated oversight. She reached her quarters and entered without pausing. The door hissed shut behind her. She didn't activate the lights. Darkness helped her think. She sat on her bunk and unfastened her boots slowly, letting her thoughts stretch like tendrils through a web of possibilities. She knew the Crucible had surveillance. Somewhere, someone was reviewing every frame. Yet no message had reached her. She lay back, eyes open, watching the faint glimmer of starlight bleed through the narrow viewport above. She didn't sleep, but she let her body rest. The adrenaline spike from earlier had drained her muscles. Her fingers still twitched slightly, subconsciously replaying the control sequences she had navigated in the sim. Her thoughts hovered around one truth. Someone wanted to break her. Not test her, not challenge her, but break her. She would not be broken. And the morning cycle began. The soft hum of systems waking up stirred the silence. She stood and stretched, then changed into her standard uniform and clipped her regulation datapad to her belt. No alerts, no summons, not even a general briefing notice. She stepped out into the corridor and found it bustling. Cadets moved between modules with synchronized steps. Some wore black stripes on their shoulder plates, a mark of Crucible achievement. Others sported advanced interface visors or neural-linked combat gloves. She passed them in silence, drawing a few glances but no words, until one voice broke through. "She's the one from last night." Maya paused mid-step, her back still turned. She didn't fire a shot, but the whole sim shut down. Everyone's talking about it. Another voice joined. "They say the sim's back-end logs crashed when she was inside. The engineers are running diagnostics now." A third added, "She reprogrammed the environment. That's what I heard. She made the enemy fight each other." She resumed walking. The whispers continued, but none dared confront her. Rumors, it seemed, traveled faster than security reports. At the mess hall, she ate in silence. No one joined her table. From a distance, two instructors exchanged words while clearly observing her. One of them, An elder gray-skinned female with a thin array of ocular lenses covering her face nodded slightly when Maya glanced in her direction. Still, no orders came. After the meal cycle ended, she was scheduled for Tactical Systems Lab, a theoretical module, not combat-intensive. The lab was located on the upper ring of the academy, near the atmospheric dome's curve. When she arrived, the instructor, a thin, almost amphibious-looking male named Varthanor, glanced up from his desk and simply pointed her to the nearest vacant station. There were 11 cadets present. The room buzzed with soft typing, neural link beeps, and the occasional muttered correction. Maya sat, logged in, and saw the simulation challenge on her terminal. Design a coordinated drop insertion strategy for 5 units into a hostile terrain zone with enemy radar coverage. She reviewed the terrain map, tapped twice to zoom into the entry corridor, and instantly saw the flaw. A canyon wall allowed thermal masking if approached at a sub-20 DG vector using passive glide boosters. She ran a model through her mind, mapped the path, and wrote the code in silence. While the others puzzled through brute force insertion routes, she simulated a no-contact infiltration using terrain echo patterns. 5 out of 5 units reached the target zone undetected. She submitted it after 12 minutes. The system flashed. Perfect infiltration strategy. Record time. Auto-grade. 100%. Varthanor looked up from his console with a flick of his nictitating eyelid. He said nothing, just recorded her result and returned to his logbook. Maya rose and left quietly when the bell chimed. As she exited the lab, a familiar voice intercepted her. "You used the sound mesh, didn't you?" She turned. It was Cadet Harvin Nix, a second-year tactical analyst from the Saturnine colonies. Tall, pale-skinned, with cybernetic implants running across his left cheekbone, Harvin was known for his aggressive simulations and ranking scores. He wasn't someone who spoke without intent. "I watched the sim recording," he continued. "Not officially, just fragments." She met his gaze, but said nothing. "I've never seen anyone use environment control like that, let alone under stress. Where did you learn it?" She replied simply, "I watched. I remembered." He tilted his head slightly. "No standard tutorial covers that depth of system layering. You bypassed at least 3 input walls." She said nothing. "You know someone's going to come for you now, right?" he added, lowering his voice. "What you did made someone look stupid. Probably someone with claws deep in the system. Then let them come," she said, her voice low and steady. "I'll make them look dumber." Harvin blinked once, then smiled faintly. "You're a problem, Reyes. Only if someone pushes." As she turned to leave, he called after her. "You should talk to Instructor Malar. She's in charge of Advanced Systems Control. If anyone knows what you accessed, it's her." Maya didn't respond, but she filed the name away. Instructor Muller. She spent the next hour in the station's observation deck. It was one of the few places that offered a clear, uninterrupted view of the planet below. Long white clouds stretched across a blue and gold atmosphere. She stood with her hands behind her back, breathing slow and deep. Her reflection stared back from the thick plasglass. Serious eyes, dark curls tied back tightly, skin dulled from the artificial lighting of the station. She thought about Earth. Not in a nostalgic way, but analytically. Earth never prepared her for this kind of war, not directly, but her father had. His strange obsession with broken tech, his insistence that nothing was ever truly sealed. "Every locked system is just a puzzle with better armor," he had said once. She used to roll her eyes. Now she was living by those words. That night, she was awoken by a chime. She hadn't remembered falling asleep. The chime repeated, insistent but not urgent. She stood and approached the door. A message blinked on the screen. "Requested audience. Malar 12 clearance." "Confirm?" She confirmed. The hallway was dark. A guide light pulsed softly, leading her toward the northern wing. Few cadets ever ventured there. It was where instructors and senior specialists kept their private offices, simulation labs, and classified modules. When she reached the destination, the door slid open without ceremony. Inside stood a tall woman, humanoid but not fully human. Her skin shimmered like graphite under moving light, and her eyes glowed faintly gold. Her uniform bore no rank, but her presence exuded command. "You accessed code not meant for cadets," she said. Maya nodded. "You triggered a recursive logic loop in a sim designed to prevent all external influence. Another nod. And yet you preserved the chain of simulated events. You obeyed protocol while rewriting expectation. Still no words from Maya. The woman stepped closer. Do you know who I am? Instructor Malar, Maya answered softly. I wrote the original Crucible engine. Maya held her gaze. Malar circled her slowly. What you did would earn a tribunal. And yet, there's no tribunal. Because half of the council wants you punished, and the other half wants to recruit you. Maya's expression didn't change. I won't ask who helped you, Malar said. Because I suspect no one did, which means you're either dangerous or brilliant. Maya replied. I'm not here to be praised. Good, Malar said, almost amused. Because I'm not here to praise. I'm here to offer you something far more dangerous than punishment or reward. She extended a small device, a narrow prism with etched runes glowing faintly. This is access to the Crucible's root system, full control, total override. Only two exist. One is locked in the council chamber, the other is here, now. Maya took it slowly. You're going to be tested again. But this time, not by jealous cadets, and not by me. Malar stepped back into the shadows. You've awakened attention, she said. Now you'll have to prove you're worth keeping alive. The door closed behind Maya, and for the first time since she arrived, she realized she was no longer playing the same game as the others. She was rewriting it. Maya walked back to her quarters with the prism tucked deep inside her jacket. Its weight felt disproportionate to its size, as if the thing carried not just authority, but consequence. She had accepted it without hesitation, but now that she was alone, the implications pressed against her ribs like invisible hands. Full access. Root override. No cadet should have it. No cadet had ever been trusted with it. Yet here she was, carrying a device that could, in theory, shut down or rewrite any simulation on the station. She could hear her father's voice in the back of her mind, half teasing, half serious. Knowledge is leverage. Just make sure you survive long enough to use it. She placed the prism on her desk and stared at it for a moment. It emitted a faint hum, barely audible but pulsing steadily like a heartbeat. She didn't touch it again. Instead, she lay back on her bunk, arms folded under her head, and thought. She knew this wasn't a gift. It was a test, as Malar had said, maybe even a trap. But she had been living under traps since the day she entered this academy. Nothing had changed. Only now the stakes were no longer whispers and sabotage in the corridors. Now, the stakes were survival at a level far beyond simulated combat. The next morning, her datapad chimed with an alert. Special assignment. Crucible. Priority tier. Commencement. Immediate. Report to Stimulation Wing Delta. No explanation. No companion roster. No listed supervising officer. She smiled grimly. It was beginning. She dressed in standard-issue training armor, checked the seal on her boots, and tied her hair back into a tight coil. She clipped the prism inside a hidden interior pocket where it would stay close to her chest, unseen but accessible. The corridors buzzed with morning activity, but she noticed a shift. The cadets gave her a wider berth now. Some lowered their eyes when she passed. Others watched her with thinly veiled curiosity. The rumors had traveled further than she expected. Good. Fear was a weapon too, even if it was still half-formed. When she arrived at Stimulation Wing Delta, the entry hall was empty except for one figure, Instructor Malar. The woman stood like a statue beside the main console, her graphite skin catching the overhead light in muted flashes. Without a word, Malar pressed a sequence on the console. The doors to the Crucible opened. Maya stepped inside. The sim loaded instantly. No transition, no build-up. One moment she was standing in the metallic prep room. The next, she was standing in the heart of a war zone. The sky above her was blood red, streaked with burning contrails. Ground-shaking explosions rumbled in the distance. The landscape was a fractured urban sprawl, collapsed buildings, craters, tangled wreckage. But more importantly, her HUD populated instantly with hostile markers, 278 enemies. Closing in, heavy infantry, aerial drones, stealth units, siege mechs. Her readout didn't even bother listing them all. It simply displayed one word: overwhelming. Maya crouched behind a fallen transport module and immediately pinged the sim's environmental matrix. No back doors presented themselves. Not yet. Whoever had designed this scenario had learned from the last one. This wasn't about glitching the drones into fighting each other. This was meant to erase her completely. Before she even had time to think, she adjusted. Instead of attacking the drones directly, she focused on the simulation's physics engine. Every sim had one. A background matrix that governed how forces, masses, impacts, and trajectories behaved within the artificial world. It was harder to manipulate. Harder, but not impossible. She initiated a low-level pulse through the prism. It synchronized with her neural implant instantly. A hidden console blinked alive in her mind's eye. She drilled through menus at a blistering pace, bypassing 3 firewalls before reaching what she needed: environmental physics variables. Her fingers moved in a blur, invisible to anyone watching. She didn't have time to flip the battlefield upside down. But she didn't need to. She needed only one thing: chain reaction. She isolated a cluster of fuel transports near the far edge of the sim zone. Their structural integrity data revealed a flaw. If one exploded at the right angle, the concussive wave would ignite 2 others. She mapped the blast radius in seconds. It wouldn't kill all the enemies, but it would start something worse: chaos. The first pulse detonated the closest transport. The fireball rippled outward, overpressurizing the adjacent fuel lines. Secondary explosions hammered the landscape, sending shockwaves through the ruined cityscape. The drones, programmed for rapid threat reassessment, reacted by shifting formation. Maya smiled sharply. She had injected a false threat vector into the environmental matrix. The drones recalibrated and began targeting not her, but each other. She moved, fast, low, silent. The Crucible's observation deck filled with instructors and strategic analysts summoned by emergency alerts. Millar stood among them, arms folded, saying nothing. One of the lead engineers muttered, "She's bypassing the adversarial matrix entirely. She's not fighting the enemies, she's weaponizing the simulation environment itself." Another said in disbelief, "That's not possible without a command override. How is she—" Millar's voice cut through. "Because she learned how to see the machine inside the machine. On the battlefield, Maya triggered a second domino. She hacked the terrain's load-bearing structures. Collapsed walls, weakened roadways, unstable towers. With precise timing, she simulated minor seismic events. The ground shifted in key locations. Buildings crumbled, not onto her, but onto patrol routes. Sniper nests dissolved into avalanches of rubble. The enemy force shrank by 30% within 60 seconds. Still, the timer in her HUD hadn't hit the 2-minute mark. She ducked into a partially collapsed metro station, used the prism to trigger a feedback loop in the subterranean magnetic lines, and sent a surge that fried nearby drone communications. Those, cut off from command protocols, defaulted to autonomous defensive mode. Attacking anything that moved, the battlefield had become a storm of blind violence, confusion, and self-destruction, and she had fired no weapon. At 1:49 on her HUD, she reached the extraction beacon hidden deep within the metro ruins. She activated it with a manual override. No default mission completion code. The Crucible responded instantly. Victory protocol initiated. The entire simulation began dissolving around her. The red sky fading into digital dust, the landscape breaking apart piece by piece. Maya stood in the center of it all, breathing steadily, heart rate barely elevated. The timer on her HUD froze at 2:00 exactly. The observation deck was silent. One of the senior officers turned toward Malar, his face tight with something that looked like anger and admiration tangled together. "She's not a cadet anymore," he said. "No," Malar agreed. "She's something else entirely." The simulation chamber's exit opened with a soft hiss. Maya walked through without hesitation, her steps quiet but certain. Outside the chamber, Instructor Malar waited. She nodded once. Maya nodded back. No words passed between them. None were needed. For the first time since Maya had arrived on Virex Station, she understood her position clearly. She wasn't a student anymore. She wasn't even a competitor in some twisted arena. She was a force. And the Academy, no, the entire Galactic Defense Assembly had just realized what kind of force Earth had sent. As she made her way down the corridor, cadets and instructors alike stepped aside. Some out of respect, some out of fear, some simply out of uncertainty. Unsure of how to confront a weapon disguised as a girl, she didn't smile, she didn't slow. She simply kept moving forward, because Maya Reyes had rewritten the rules, and she was just getting started. The day after the simulation, Maya's name appeared on every screen across Virex Station. Not as an announcement, not as a trial, as a new classification, race. Maya, elevated clearance, strategic systems consultant, probationary, effective immediately. There were no bells, no ceremony, just the clinical language of a system acknowledging a shift it could no longer ignore. The cadet forums buzzed with speculation. The official logs had been scrubbed of the mission's details, but rumors moved like fire through dry air. 2 minutes, no combat, total victory. Some whispered that she had discovered a cheat. Others claimed she had been implanted with forbidden tech. A few, those who understood just enough to feel fear, kept their mouths shut and watched her from a distance. She was no longer avoided, she was observed. She moved through the station without a squad, without orders, and without debriefings. No instructors summoned her for questioning, no simulations were assigned. Instead, she was given something far more unsettling. Freedom. The week passed in silence, but it was the kind of silence that came with sharp edges. She had turned the academy into a mirror, and every cadet, instructor, and officer now had to confront what they saw reflected in her. Not potential, not ambition, but capability. On the 8th day, a message arrived. Short, unsigned, encrypted, with a clearance level 3 tiers above her current assignment. Proceed to Dome 9. Black briefing, attire, formal. Time, immediate. She stood from her desk, dressed quickly in her deep gray uniform, and stepped into the corridor with her posture tall and her mind sharpened to a blade. Dome 9 wasn't listed on any of the standard maps. She had passed it once during orientation and assumed it was a maintenance hub closed to cadets. When she arrived, 2 guards with full armor and neural dampeners stood in front of the entrance. Neither spoke. One scanned her ID band and stepped aside. The interior was dark, sleek, silent, a single room, circular, 10 figures seated in a ring, each in different robes, uniforms, or armor, representatives from the Galactic Defense Assembly's highest council. Each one a legend in her own right. Each one capable of commanding fleets, deploying world-saving initiatives, or authorizing planetary strikes. The air felt heavy, not from pressure, but from presence. At the center stood a pedestal. On it, her prism. The woman seated at the apex of the ring leaned forward. She was human, but barely. Her eyes were chrome. Her hair moved like nanofiber cables. Her voice, when she spoke, seemed to pass through the walls themselves. You broke our simulation. Maya said nothing. You rewrote code that was designed to remain inaccessible, bypassed tripwire protocols, and weaponized our system against itself. Still, Maya remained still. You have been watched from the moment you arrived. Your background flagged anomalies. Your father was known to us. He once applied to the Defense Corps, but was denied for behavioral instability. He built systems we later classified as dangerous. Maya's lips parted. He built them because he knew the ones in power weren't asking the right questions. Silence. Then the woman stood. Tell me, Maya Reyes, do you believe yourself above war? No, Maya answered. I believe I understand it differently. The woman walked slowly around the ring. You turned a battlefield into a theater. You orchestrated destruction without engaging the enemy. Why? Because you programmed enemies to be solved, Maya said. But you didn't ask what would happen if the battlefield itself stopped obeying. You weaponized silence, the woman replied. I exposed design, Maya countered. Your simulations assume combat superiority comes from firepower. I proved it doesn't. Another voice spoke, this one from a tall insectoid representative to the left. Her voice clicked through a translator. Your results cannot be replicated. That makes them dangerous. I don't want them replicated, Maya replied. I want them understood. The woman at the apex studied her for a long moment. Then she reached out and touched the prism on the pedestal. It pulsed once. The crucible was not meant to be defeated. It was meant to define those who entered it. You have broken that. Now you must carry what comes after. The insectoid spoke again. She is untested beyond simulation. She will be tested, the woman replied. But not through war, through choice. She turned to Maya directly. You have two options. Maya's gaze didn't falter. You may return to your quarters. Finish your cadet term in silence. We will block further access to simulation code. You will graduate with honors. Quietly. No rank, no position of influence. A foot. Maya's voice came low but firm. And the second? The woman's eyes glowed faintly. You accept a commission beyond the council's reach. We send you to the fringe, to our furthest outposts in the Delta Ring. A diplomatic front, unstable, volatile. No oversight, no reinforcements. You will serve not as a soldier, but as a strategist. You will act under your own judgment. We will not interfere, but we will be watching. Maya stepped forward. I accept the second. The insectoid hissed sharply. She accepts exile. No, the woman said. She accepts responsibility. Maya lifted the prism from the pedestal. It was cold, heavier than before, but it responded to her touch as if it had always belonged in her hand. When she left the dome, the guards saluted. 3 days later, she boarded a transport to the outer systems. She carried no medals, no flags, just a sealed file marked Independent Command, Sovereign Tactics Initiative, and a set of coordinates no one else in the academy could access. The shuttle pilot didn't speak. He didn't need to. The stars beyond the viewing window glittered, like old questions waiting to be answered. Months passed. Then a message arrived on the central broadcast hub of Virex Station. It was simple. No sender, no signature, just a line of code. Crucible revision approved. Phase 2 initiated. Human tactics now standard, variable. The council convened again, this time without secrecy. Instructor Maller stood at the center and said only one thing. She didn't win because she was human. She won because she saw the pattern we refused to see. From that moment forward, every cadet, human or not, entered the crucible with new parameters. One scenario now appeared without warning. It had no enemies, no weapons, no map. Only a message. Win without violence, survive without submission, solve without destruction. Few ever completed it, but the ones who did knew one name, Maya Reyes.